Right, hey guys, I'm making a video not because I think anybody's actually going to watch it at this point. Obviously, I'd like that, but whatever. I want to articulate some thoughts I've been having that have been interesting me a bit, that might interest some other people that I may well link to this video. I don't know yet. These thoughts have been about the, I suppose, meme campaign from people who've supported Donald Trump in the recent election. Um, Obviously, this started about 6 months ago for me now, because I wasn't really paying attention, frankly. And yeah, I think it's been a really interesting development, particularly in the more recent climate of the meme pages after his success, which has really given rise to. I'm sure you've seen it before. I mean, there's the Pepe the Frog, like he's from 4chan. That's one of their old things, and this rise of the worship almost of a, I wouldn't call him a deified figure because he's not really. I don't think he's seriously worshipped, but this archetypal figure of Pepe as the god Kek, which I find is a really interesting idea. I want to talk about this mostly because I've also got a really heavy interest in Discordianism, which is I'll give a quick rundown of before I actually go into proper discussion. Preface to anything else, I was on 4chan for quite a large portion of my life. For about 6 years, I frequented mostly K and B, being the angsty little teen I was, which is about 4 years ago now. I stopped when the community I want to say that when the community went to shit, but quite frankly, it wasn't too good before. Yeah, Discordianism. I don't like the actual religious side of it. I think that's a bit of a joke, but the philosophy of it I find very interesting. And last word to say before I actually get into it is that my flatmates have had a little bit too much sugar, so you may hear screaming in the background. I don't have a dungeon, I promise. Okay, right. So, to begin by outlining the philosophy behind Discordianism, the main principal part of it is the understanding that chaos as a concept isn't necessarily a bad thing. Um, we as humans have that natural tendency to lean towards chaos as an evil. You can see it easily in Norse mythology with Loki, god of chaos. You can see it in, well, Eris herself, Discordia, who is obviously painted in a very bad light. We see as anything that negates our order and our building of this bizarre civilization that we have as absolute evil. And Discordianism basically opposes that, saying that evil isn't, well, evil isn't, frankly. Neither is chaos, neither is order any moral way, which is probably the worst way I could possibly have said that. But yeah, it's a lens through which we view reality. And I think one of the best analogies I got for that was constellations, which is the stars are where they are. They are not in Orion's belt because they were created as Orion's belt. They are there, and we call them Orion's belt. If we moved, if we got a completely different set of constellations, the stars would look exactly the same, but we'd call it fucking Pete's wheelbarrow or something. And that's the basic concept, is that it doesn't matter, um, which obviously leads into the idea that if chaos and order are neither morally direct in any way, then that implies that both chaos and order are useful and are beneficial as well as negative, which obviously can be seen, the negatives of order in fascism and the positives of chaos in evolution, really. Natural selection would arguably, mutation be a positive of chaos. This is a really important thing because the next part, which is where I'm going to explain Kek as a concept, as I understand it anyway, you're going to see a lot of parallels here. Right, so on to Kek as a concept. Obviously, it's based around this frog Pepe, which I presume is probably because that was the poster child of Hillary's worry campaign against memes, which was just so misguided. But my opinions on the politics shouldn't involve this. So yeah, that became this poster child of the alt right, the alternative right wing, which I'm going to try to leave the politics out of this because, frankly, I have no interest in it. But they immediately jumped on this. They loved it, and yeah, they immediately started writing him into all the well. He was already a very pervasive character. Like there was hundreds of different variations on how the character was drawn or the concept, and there was this whole rare Pepe thing, which obviously most people know about nowadays. But this started becoming, they started painting him as political figures. They used to. They are superimposing his face over things like Jesus, over things like saw one of Vishnu, I think, something like that. All these creatures that are deified creatures or people. And yeah, they started doing this whole Kek thing, which at the time I believe was like their equivalent to LOL or whatever, a way of laughing. But for some reason, not one that I've actually noticed yet, but for some reason this was adopted as the name of this conceptual deity, possibly. Quickly following this was obviously the chaotic rise of Trump. Like the world wasn't really expecting it, and I think that the force of the anonymous people, which by nature is going to be chaotic because they're not coordinated in a crowd, they're not coordinated by a belief, they're just coordinated by whatever takes their fancy at that time, and that could be obviously seen by things like 4chan raids on Tumblr. Slightly off topic there, but it's a good way of explaining why chaos is seen as such a positive thing for them. Yeah, these guys think that Kek, well, there's a variety of them. I'd say the archetypal people following this idea is that Kek represents chaos of the people, I think. It's the anonymous ability for people to do things that they deem morally good in the name of Kek, in that they want to attribute good from an action to this force, I suppose. That's interesting. That reminds me a bit of the Crusaders, really. Like they went out to do what they thought was good, obviously debatable, but it was in the name of God. And obviously Deus Vult has been used as another buzzword by people who do support this movement, and they do think that they are doing good, and they are mostly anonymous, other than obviously people who aren't anonymous, obviously. And that's contrasted with some people who, whether it's ironic or not, or whether it's post-ironic or not, because at this point these terms are a bit nebulous in this context, they believe that possibly, they might believe that Kek is actually a force, like a tangible, almost like a god force, who has, he acts in chaotic ways, and I think I've read somewhere or heard somewhere that I think it was something like Kek giveth with one hand and taketh with the other, which to me anyway implies that it's like the whole double-edged sword thing. Some people say that every time Kek brings something good, he also brings something bad to balance it. So chaos as the settler of the waters, almost. I find that interesting. Obviously, there's also the 4chan remnants that he blesses his disciples with dubs or trips, or if people don't know what that is, it's very easy. 4chan posts are numbered. If you get more than one number in a row at the end of a number, then that's dubs or trips or whatever, triples, blah blah blah. And yeah, it's interesting because partly freakily because quite a few of these dubs and trips posts have actually come true, which is obviously confirmation bias, but it is an interesting thing to look at, especially when people bring it up as proof of his divine power. Yeah, that's interesting. That brings me on to the next thing, which is the split timeline theory. It's a bit out there. basically some of these people believe that Keck, this election, split the timeline from the power of memes, which when you go from like memetics as a concept where all of these people thinking the same thing at once with the same concept, you can kind of get where they're coming from. Like, if all of these people have exactly the same wants in mind with the same connotations therein, that's quite a powerful idea. And these people, I'm assuming from that respect, possibly from a different respect, think that this chaos power managed to split timelines into one where Donald Trump wins and one where Hillary wins. And we are obviously in the one where Donald Trump wins, which they have said contains his chosen people. And they have dubbed the Bear-Stained Bears universe, which is an American reference that I don't understand. But I think it's something to do with possibly the Goldilocks thing of just right, perfect, whatever. Like it's supposed to be the good one, basically. And he's got more. They say that he's got more sway in this universe now. Okay. Obviously, I don't buy into the whole religious side of it. I think it's a good laugh and it's quite interesting, but I'm not a nutter, frankly. That's in either of those philosophies. I find the idea of actually worshipping either of those things laughable. But you can't deny that they are both justified. Like, they are both agents of chaos that give and take as a neutral. Like, they don't have good or bad, except for Keck, who, with some semblance of sentience almost. The reason why I wanted to make this video is because I see parallels. Eris, who is she's also called Discordia. Dis in I believe the Odyssey and the Iliad is Dis is in reference to Discordia. It's shortened for reasons unknown. She's the poster child for Discordianism. Obviously, she's the origin of the golden apple, which you sow a golden apple, somebody picks it up, and chaos ensues, presumably. That's interesting because Eris as a goddess, isn't active per se. She causes things to happen by existing. She's a passive actor, almost passive aggressor. I don't know what you call that, but she's defined more as a force of nature than a god itself, like a bit like the Fates. If I'm getting way too into the Greek here, but she's not an active part, which is in contrast to Keck as a active part, and that duality is quite interesting. It reminds me a bit of the Green Man and the threefold goddess, I think she's called, in the Wiccan pantheon, wherein the Green Man is a very active, very passive. He grows the forests and he does nature. Don't know what word you'd use for that. And then the goddess is what they believe allows them to actually affect the world. I see a bit of that in this. Eris is the agent of chaos. She exists as chaos. The same way you'd say wind exists as the concept of wind. And Keck exists as the personification almost. It's the will of chaos, the will to chaos, which I suppose would be similar to entropy, the personified entropy almost, which is interesting because they both complement and mirror each other almost. Keck using chaos to create order and Eris causing chaos in order, which is interesting. Second point, the last point anyway, it'll be quite a long video actually. After all that rant, I found it interesting, my last note here, the idea that cuck, which is a very common insult from somebody who is part of the alt-right, is somebody who's a modern internet user, essentially. Obviously it's a shortened version of cuckold. Cuckold is somebody who enjoys watching somebody else have sex with their partner. Uh, Obviously, I think that's abhorrent, but some people are interested in that, and yeah, more power to them, whatever. Um, I find that interesting because a cuckold is a passive in an active situation. Um, if you're being cuckolded, then you are a passive watcher. You can't affect it, um, which obviously is the opposite of what followers of Kek or Kek cultists, whatever they want to call themselves, whatever they what they epitomize is action. They like action for the sake of action. They just want to change something so that order can re-establish itself. I find that really interesting, and I don't think that's at all what they intended. But yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. Um, that's pretty much all I wanted to say, to be honest. Just get that all out in the air. I don't follow any of this. I'm not a racist. I'm not a fascist. Don't associate me with any of these people. I just found the philosophy of it interesting. Okay, thanks.